So here we are a month later after Outriders release. Post-patch, we finally reached the in-game content, and I know that every YouTuber and their mother is out there making videos on this, but if you want to know the only 3 tips you need to know about this game, stick around to the end of the video. Welcome back to the channel, YouTube. Winks here. As usual, if you haven't already, go ahead and hit that like and subscribe button. And while you're at it, go ahead and hit that notification bell too, so you never miss out on a video that I drop. So let's go ahead and get right into it. So today's video is about Outriders. So if you've been playing the game ever since its release date, then you're gonna already kind of be familiar with some of the things that I'm talking about. You'll notice that there's already a bunch of different YouTubers on YouTube trying to put out all these helpful videos for people. And at this point, after most of the patches and nerfs that they've done on this game, some of those videos are now pointless to watch. But in their defense, at the time, they were helpful. So let's go ahead and jump right into that and let me show you what I'm talking about. So I did some research on this game because if you're like me, you've already reached the in-game content. Once you get to the in-game content, the only thing left after the story is the expeditions, right? But they've nerfed the hell out of this game, and this game is really, once you beat the story mode, if you're not into continuous runs of expeditions, then this game's probably going to wear out really quick. But I'm going to try and share some of this stuff, and I've tried to keep it in chronological order for you to follow along. So this game was released on April 1st. And before that, there was a demo that was released that allowed people to go ahead and play this game, and some of the items that you got in the game during the demo period, they allowed you to carry over into the game once it released. There was a lot of issues with it during the time. If you've been playing it as long as I have, then like I said, you're already aware of this stuff. So I was going through just like you, trying to find, what other YouTubers were talking about, seeing what was actually worth putting out about this game. And I came across, a few different ones, which I've got up right here. And shout out to some of these YouTubers. One of these YouTubers, his name's Obligated, you can see right there. He had made a video on how to reach your challenge tier, and when I watched it, the only thing that I could focus on, because I was at this point, was how the hell did he get all of these legendaries? So I asked him, and he actually responded to me, and he told me that he basically got all his legendaries during the demo period. So if you've paid attention to any of the news releases, you know that they have now since had issues with the inventory. People lost inventory. They came out with a solution where they were going to god roll items that were supposed, the stats on those items were supposed to be equal to, whatever you had previously lost, which in my opinion, probably not so much. I've played this game. I've done all the side missions. I've done the historian. I've done the beast hunts, the manhunt ones. After all of that and reaching challenge tier 8, I'd still only acquired probably about 5 legendaries. The legendary drop rate on this game is very misleading in my opinion. And some of these farms that some of these YouTubers were doing, in their defense at the time, was working. But now it is not. Another YouTuber by the name of Ranks Plays, shout out to Ranks, he actually had some good videos that he was putting out, and he still does, so go check him out. But one of the things that he had actually reported on was getting a specific legendary, and if you watch his video, he'll explain it. But the gist is that you do all the monster hunts, you set your world tier to level 1. On the last one, you set it to level 15 or whatever your highest one was. You go to the guy in the bar, and then you collect all of them, you turn them all in, and then on the last one, before you close your game out, you go to sell an item, and you could preview what the legendary was that he was going to give you. And if you didn't like it, you could basically just shut your system off before it had a chance to save and reload it to go back to that mission and try and get a different legendary, because it was random at the time. And he put this out on April 20th, and 2 days later, another YouTuber by Lieutenant Buzz Lightyear put out the same exact thing, and he explained the same exact thing. Now, because this was going around on the internet so much, developers heard about this and they changed it. And there was an article released by Forbes. I'll post all the links to every one of these windows that I have open in the description below. But you'll see, it says right here, but because of an exploit that allowed people to get multiple legendaries quickly from this, the entire system has gone away, rather than the exploit itself being fixed. So during some of the patches, they fixed that. You can't even do that anymore. And you know, there's a lot of chatter out there on the internet, and from what I've been reading on Reddit, you can see here that a lot of people are going through the same issues. It's very difficult to get these legendaries, and there's not really a lot of tips that somebody can give you on this game at this point anymore. But you know, when it comes to the god rolls, you know, there was a method that you could pull one of your, if you had the DLC content from the Hells Rangers, you could grab the assault rifle out of there and then try and go roll its variant, and if you landed on a specific trait or a specific firepower, it was 370 or around that, you could then upgrade it, and it would upgrade to around somewhere around 90,000. Well, I can tell you from my experience, I have tried this since then, since this last patch 107, that no longer works. When I did it, the variant did not change the value at all. It stayed the same as what it was. So there again is another thing that they have changed in this game. IGN actually wrote an article that talked about this. When that was supposed to be People Can Fly's solution to giving people back inventory that they had lost during the demo. So the bad news for you, again, is if you didn't play the demo and you didn't get those legendaries like you saw on that first screen and this YouTuber, well, you're not going to get it now because they fixed it since then. IGN, just to give you a heads up, wrote an article on this game. You know, they review a lot of games, and they have reviewed and given this game an overall score of 7, which I'm inclined to agree with. 7's probably a good rating for this game. Though, like I said, those of you who have played this game, you know exactly what I'm talking about, where they're coming from. And, you know, a lot of the points they make in this article, I agree with most of them. Some of them I don't as much. And you can read it for yourself. One of the things that I don't like about this game is the very limited amount of enemies. There's probably about 10 total enemy variants, give or take 1 or 2. You got about 5 different soldiers you can kill, and you got about 5 different alien enemies that you can kill. So, you know, that's just one of the things that's probably not the best thing about this game. The loot farming, again, just like it says right here, it doesn't revolutionize that, and now since the patches, it's probably even harder to get any of these legendaries. The crafting system, you can upgrade the rarity of your weapon, and you can get 2 mods on 1 gun, but my issue with this game is the fact that you can only change 1 mod. You have to basically continuously grind for no reason at all to try and get one of the 2 mods that you would like to stay there and modify the other one to get the perfect gun and or armor for your build that you're doing. And you know, when it comes to the tiers and stuff like that, you know, a little bit more on that later. That is actually one of my 3 tips that I'm going to give you. If you've already played the game and you've already tried to farm your world tiers, which if you haven't already seen my video on how to farm your world tiers, go ahead and check that out. That'll show you how to do it. But before you get to that, I would say hold off on farming your world tier, and I'll explain why a little bit later. And you can see from this article that IGN is talking about, if you go back to the very beginning of this article, one of the very first things they talk about it, which is what everybody experienced when it came out. In the first paragraph, they list persistent bugs. Now, for that to be one of your main points in your article, that ought to tell you something about your game, if that's what people are saying about you. And then again, later on, it goes down further into the article and it brings it up again. I'm trying to find where they put it on here, but it is definitely in here. So that's pretty much, so there it is again. Outriders also has its fair share of technical issues. So that's twice now in this one article that they've mentioned that, right? And everybody that's played it is aware of that. So the video today is actually going to be fairly short. I just wanted to give you some tips. So as I said in the beginning of this game, there's 3 tips that I have for you. Because we're at this point now where they've nerfed this game so much, there's really not anything to this game that requires a YouTube video anymore. You should not be posting, in my opinion, unless somebody specifically asks me to know what my build is. You know, watching the endless YouTube videos about watch me solo run this on challenge tier 15, or you know, this is my build that I do. You know, a lot of that is, you know, if you're not doing that yourself and experimenting with the customization and figuring that out, it's really not going to help you much. You're really missing out on the whole thing of playing this game and enjoying it. But here's the 3 tips that I'm going to give you. One, the first tip is how to farm your world tier, right? So if you haven't already, check that video out about how you farm your world tier. If you just must farm your world tier. But here's what I'm going to tell you about your world tier, right? When you reach the end game and you come here and you start doing these expeditions, because ultimately that's what you're going to do after you beat the story. I didn't watch any of the story. I clicked through every single cutscene there was because I just did not care about the story. But if you look here, once you go into a mission, you can actually lower the tiers, and I'm going to set it down to 1, right? And if you can see that right there, it says enemies and loot on tier 1 is 31. That's the level of the enemies and the gear that you'll be getting from these drops. So my advice to you, when it comes to those world tiers, just completely forget about it, honestly. Because once you get to the end game, all you really got to do is get through the story at least at level 31, right? It really depends on how you want to play it. I don't remember how strong the end boss was, but if you set him to world tier 1 when you fight him, you can just blast right through him no matter what your rank on your armor is. It doesn't matter. So I wouldn't even worry about farming your world tiers past this point, past level 31, because it's not even worth it. Once you get to the expeditions, you're going to start getting that loot anyway, as you can see there. Now, I know it's very difficult, and as you can see, I've only made it to about challenge tier 13, right? And then on that, your enemy's level and loot is 48, right? So here's my tip for that. Tip number 2, when it's in reference to your challenge tier and not your world tier. What you need to do to get your challenge tier up, because there are so many other people that played this game during the demo, I would recommend that you do these tiers in a party, because that is, doing this solo starting out is going to be almost impossible. So what I would tell you to do is go to this little thing right here and find a party and jump into somebody's game if you can. Or if you have friends that play it with you, try and do these challenges together, because that is the easiest. It's not really easy, but it's the easiest way for you to get your challenge tiers up. Because even if you jump into a random person's game, you might luckily jump into somebody that's higher than you, and even if you don't beat that challenge, if you survive long enough to collect some loot from that, you'll get higher level loot. That way the next time you try and go back to your challenge tier and complete it, it'll be easier because your loot will be higher. So that's tip number 2. Tip number 1 was the world tier. Just don't do it, basically, past 31. Tip number 3, unfortunately, if you've already bought this game, this tip is not going to help you. But this tip is specifically for those that have not got this game and are thinking about this game. Do not buy this game for 60 bucks. This game is not worth 60 bucks. I showed you all the articles. I showed you what other people were talking about this game. Just, fair warning, save your $60 and wait for this game to go on to like the $30 rack or the $20 rack, because really there is not enough content in this game to make it worth 60 bucks. I'm currently sitting at around 82% of the trophies. There's a few little, I think there's 5 trophies left for me to do, and it's it's real simple stuff like sell 300 items, complete all side quests. I could easily get 100% trophies on this game if I wanted to. So those are my 3 tips. You know, world tier, challenge tier, and save your money.